Texas A&M at Texas, Thanksgiving Day or night. I'm not sure. Marco.
It's night.
It's night.
It's night.
Who do you like and why?
I like Texas in this game. It's a big rivalry game. Short week for A&M. Both teams short week. But Texas played Florida Atlantic, which was a cakewalk. Texas A&M was in an absolute physical battle against Nebraska last Saturday night, late Saturday.
So you think about it, this is almost a perfect storm where the schedule will have an effect on performance. Physical game, then traveling, versus almost a bye, a quasi-bye for Texas at home. So to me, you might almost say nothing else matters in this game unless there was a real reason not to like Texas. And again, this is something we talk about again and again and again, is factors that can be identified and then accounted for in the line don't mean anything. But that's the kind of stuff with the scheduling and the physical versus almost the bye that the lines maker doesn't seem to account for as much as he should.
No, and when you've got a Texas A&M team that's won 5 games in a row now, and until last week when they were held to 9 points, which, by the way, I went against Texas A&M last week as, our best bet on the show. If you would have told me prior to that game, hey, Texas A&M's going to score 9, how much do you want to bet? I'd be, broadcasting this week from the Strip in a box because I would have bet the house. But it was a physical game.
The Strip in a box? What does that mean?
I would have been on the Las Vegas Strip in one of those cardboard boxes because I would have lost my house.
That would be a sight.
But this is a situation that Texas A&M, it was a dogfight. If you watched that game last week, it was physical. Nebraska got called for 16 penalties in that game, and Bo Pelini just went crazy on the sidelines. But I've got other stuff other than the perfect storm.
So let me ask you this. All right, so we've identified the schedule.
Right.
You also talked about 5 straight wins for an A&M. They've actually covered all 5 of those.
Yes, they have.
So Vegas has undervalued A&M in general, though sometimes with a marquee win like that on TV with a lot of attention, there can be a real reversal from undervalued to overvalued very quickly. How much does all the hubbub about the refereeing, officiating, how much does that affect that performance? Does it, in a way, for the public, mitigate A&M got a bunch of calls, that's why they won? And did you watch the game?
I did watch the game.
Do you think the officiating was unfair?
I do think that it was, but of course I was a little bit biased in the game because I had a lot of skin in the game on that play.
So if that's genuinely the case, we talk about going inside the box score. You're saying A&M's win here was aided a little bit, which means it was even probably, there's going to be even more of an overvaluation from it because they really didn't legitimately perform as well as it would seem.
Right, and you combine that with the penalties, RJ, in that game also. Going into the game, Martinez, the quarterback for Nebraska, had been banged up, but he was okay to start that game. He was fine until his center stepped on his foot at the end of the first quarter, early second, and he didn't play the rest of the first half. Came back in the second half, but didn't play as well.
Tough calls, horrible quarterback, that all adds up to the performance on ESPN highlights looking better than maybe it legitimately was.
It was. And then the other thing flip it back to Texas. Here's a team that's got high motivation. It's a rivalry game, and normally they're the team that's the favorite, and A&M's the underdog normally in this series. So now it's a role reversal, and Texas players, this has been a bad season for Texas. Let's not kid anybody. They're sitting at 5-6. The motivation for Texas is not only to knock off the rival, but they don't want to be the first school, Texas football, since 1997 to have a losing record.
Okay, interesting. I thought you were going to get into bowl eligibility. Now, is this Texas, is this their last game?
This is their last game.
So this is up for bowl eligibility too. I actually think that bowl eligibility, I had a little trouble last time on that, might be a negative here for Texas. And college football is a sport I've got some friends in coaching. When a team is a national, quite frankly, last year they played for the national championship. Right. The idea of going to the Alamo Bowl is almost a negative. They have to practice an entire, people forget, if you don't make a bowl, you're done till spring ball, lifting or whatever. They got to practice an extra month, go travel for 5 days. in a way, subconsciously, a lot of these players don't want to do that. That's a little left field kind of angle there. Now, one thing backing up Texas here, home team has covered 10 of 12 in this series. So it's a rivalry, and like you've been talking about to me, and you're going to do a webcam. Why don't you explain that on the concept?
Yeah, check my homepage later in the week, and I'll post it in the forums.
MarcoDangelo.com.
And I'm going to talk about how to handicap rivalry, because it's a totally different handicap, guys. If you handicap strictly looking at statistics, you're going to get killed this weekend.
All right, so in this game, take a highlight. What are you looking at in this game that if this was week 5 is different because of the rivalry?
Well, this is a situation that normally in a rivalry game, I have the bias that I am going to start on the dog every game this week.
Because they tend to be closer than numbers indicate the game.
Right. And when you do handicap teams, the team that's the favorite late in the season generally has more on the line. Maybe they're playing for a BCS bowl. Maybe we're going to talk about a game later where a team's going to be playing for the national championship possibility. It's all things that put added pressure on. The team that's the underdog may not be going to a bowl game, and this may be their bowl game, so to speak.
All right, so I'm not interested in the generic stuff. That's on your webcam. Right. I'll watch it. What specifically is applicable in this game?
In this game, it is the underdog that's trying to spoil the favorite's party and send them to a lesser bowl. Because they've had a bad season, this is their chance to play spoiler.
But is a team that played the national championship last year really going to be motivated by that? I can see a team that hasn't made a bowl for 5 years, and then this is all they got. For Texas, it's almost like if my mom played 1-2 no limit and there was an $80 bet, it'd be like the most exciting thing for her. Like, oh my God, $80 is on the line. If someone plays 10-20 no limit at the Bellagio, $80 is something that they flick out there like a peanut. I get that handicap. If Pitt hasn't made a bowl for 3 years or West Virginia hasn't, they want to beat Pitt and make them not win the Big East or whatever. I totally get that. But is Texas really going to be motivated by that?
You got to listen to your rival, do the trash talk for a whole year when you lose.
So and that's the thing. I'm an Ohio State grad. I understand Ohio State, Michigan. When we talk about that game, I'm not going to question Michigan's motivation. I'm not going to question Ohio State's. And again, maybe you don't know because geographically we aren't exposed to the same things as people in Texas. Is A&M Texas at the level of Michigan Ohio State?
Texas A&M Texas would not be on the same level as Michigan Ohio State because Texas has another game every year that's a rivalry, and that's the Red River Shootout with Oklahoma. But I can say from the Texas A&M side, which doesn't benefit my Texas play here, this game is that big to A&M against Texas every year. But because Texas is the team that's the underdog.
I question Texas's motivation here. And in general, I do think A&M's a little overrated. So it's almost like, pro one side, con the other. It's a pass for me. What's your official projection?
I've got Texas winning the game 26-23, pulling them out, upset, take Texas on Thursday to kick off rivalry week.
Last stat, Texas is 2-9 against the spread versus winning teams. I'm starting to wonder, this McCoy, he's quite a pro quarterback at this point. Surprisingly good, I think.
Surprising me, definitely.
And Vince Young's one of the best college quarterbacks ever. I mean, Tommy Frazier was too, but people don't think, pro doesn't matter when it comes to this stuff. I'm wondering if this whole idea that Texas is like a Florida, is like a USC, I'm wondering if they've just had a couple, they've been one echelon down. Maybe they're a top 15 team talent-wise, and they've had 2 quarterbacks that just have been really good, and this year they don't have it. I don't see how you're 2 out of 11 against winning teams, ATS, and there's not something fundamentally wrong with his team. I think as a program, they might be a little bit overrated because there's only, Ohio State, USC, there's only a handful of teams, Oklahoma, but even last year, Oklahoma went 6-5, that win every year. And I'm not sure Texas, too deep or 3 deep, is as good as some of those other teams over the last few years. Maybe the quarterback has been the thing that's made it seem that way.
Well, you have a good offense and a strong defense, which they've had the last several years. That is definitely a key for success.
You know, I'm 2-0 against you with our heads-up bets. And I'm just wondering, is this where I want to fire? You know, actually, there's one game of yours I hate, so I'm going to hold. So here's a little tease as we move on here. One is Marco is going to pay me the nickel he lost last week, and we always do that on camera for your enjoyment. And number two is I'm going to be fading his best bet with a big bet myself, which is rare because Marco's best bets are serious. So we got that coming up. Now you can continue the conversation with Marco and me in the comments section. And next up, we're going to be talking about Auburn at Alabama on Friday.